At 8:15 p.m., Lorany Bistro glowed with the quiet arrogance of old money. Crystal light, low murmurs, and the kind of prices that made silence feel expensive. Sarah Bennett moved through the room with the practiced grace of someone who'd learned to hide exhaustion behind steady hands. As she approached table 1, Harrison Sterling didn't greet her. He smirked, glanced at her worn shoes, then leaned toward his date. "Watch how quickly she folds," he whispered. He switched into an ornate, archaic French. Fast, performative, designed to cut. A few diners paused mid-conversation. He wanted an audience. He wanted her small. But Sarah didn't lower her gaze. She stood still, breath tight, the memory of Paris flickering behind her eyes. "Is that too difficult for you?" Harrison taunted. And that was when she answered. Calm, flawless, and in a dialect he had only pretended to know. The room shifted. What happens next rewrites the balance of power entirely. If you're hooked already, hit like and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales for the full story. The hush that followed Sarah's unexpected reply rippled outward, pulling nearby tables into the moment like a silent current. Harrison Sterling's fork paused mid-air. His smirk withered. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out thin, brittle, like someone pretending they hadn't just tripped in front of a crowd. "Cute," he muttered, leaning back as if he still held the upper hand. But his eyes flicked toward the diners who were now subtly watching him instead of their food. Sarah didn't linger. She stepped away, steady, professional, though her pulse thudded in her ears. She felt a familiar tremor in her hands and curled her fingers to hide it. It was the same tremor she felt every time she handed over her paycheck to keep her father in the care facility. The same tremor that had followed her since she'd abandoned Paris and her future because one stroke had rewritten everything. In the service station, Tanya lifted an eyebrow. "What did you say to him?" "Nothing he didn't ask for," Sarah murmured, reaching for a tray she didn't need just to keep her hands moving. Before Tanya could press further, the restaurant door swung open and a gust of cold January air carried in a rowdy group of financiers. Their voices tangled with the metallic clink of utensils and the soft hum of violins playing through hidden speakers. It was the type of night Sarah knew all too well, long, loud, and filled with people who treated service workers like convenient mirrors for their egos. But table 1 had shifted. Jessica, the woman in the red dress, stared down at her untouched salad, her fingers twisting the napkin. She looked trapped between embarrassment and relief, as if someone had cracked open a window in a suffocating room. Harrison, on the other hand, was recovering. His cheeks were still flushed, but his arrogance returned like a stain resurfacing after a wash. He leaned over the table, stabbing a piece of foie gras he'd previously rejected. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "A waitress thinks she can talk back. I'll make sure she remembers her place." Jessica whispered, barely audible. "Harrison, maybe let it go." "Let it go," he scoffed. "People like her don't learn unless you teach them." Sarah re-entered the room, delivering wine to another table, and Harrison's eyes narrowed, locking onto her like a predator reassessing a target. Something cold slid into her chest when she saw the expression. Not annoyance, not irritation, something darker. She'd seen that look once before, in the eyes of an employer who fired her for refusing to work through a fever. It wasn't long before the shift twisted again. She was delivering bread to a couple near the back when Kevin sprinted toward her, breathless, pale. "Sarah," he gasped. "He's saying you stole his credit card." For a moment, her mind emptied. Then everything rushed in at once. Fear, disbelief, anger. Her palms dampened, and her throat tightened as if she were inhaling cold air. "He what?" she managed. "He's shouting," Kevin stuttered. "People are recording. Henderson's trying to calm him down, but he's demanding the police." Sarah felt something collapse inside her. Not loudly, quietly, like a shelf finally giving in after bearing too much weight. She untied her apron, retied it tighter, and forced her legs to move. She refused to hide. Hiding meant guilt, and guilt meant losing everything. Her job, her father's treatment, the fragile balance she fought for every day. When she stepped into the dining room, Harrison's voice was booming across the restaurant. "She took it," he barked. "I left my card right here. She walked away and now it's gone. I want her searched." The diners, expensive suits, glittering necklaces, manicured nails, turned toward her, some curious, some skeptical, some eager for entertainment. The restaurant no longer felt elegant, felt carnivorous. "Mr. Sterling," Sarah said evenly, "I did not take your card." "Of course you did," he scoffed. "Look at you. Desperate. Overwhelmed. I'm sure the temptation was too much." Jessica flinched. Her voice wobbled. "Harrison, stop. You didn't even." "Quiet," he snapped. Sarah stood rooted in place, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She could feel the weight of every gaze pressing against her skin. "Empty your pockets," Harrison commanded. "Or the police will." Before Sarah could answer, a voice from the back cut through the tension like a blade. "That won't be necessary." The room shifted as an older gentleman rose from his chair. He moved with unhurried calm, the kind that didn't need to prove itself. His gray hair framed a face etched with authority, and the way he held his cognac suggested he'd spent his life around rooms like this, rooms where power whispered instead of shouted. "Sir," Harrison scoffed, "this has nothing to do with you." "It does," the man replied, stepping forward, "because lies tend to infect the air around them, and I prefer to breathe clean air." He stopped beside Sarah and examined Harrison with mild irritation, as if puzzled by a malfunctioning piece of machinery. "Check your left interior jacket pocket," the older man said. Harrison laughed. "I didn't put it there." "Check," the man repeated, his voice no louder than before, yet impossible to disobey. Harrison shoved his hand into the pocket, ready to prove him wrong, then froze. The card sat between his fingers, gleaming under the restaurant lights. A ripple spread through the room. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered. "He planted it." Jessica covered her mouth. The older man gave a small nod. "There it is. A mystery solved. Unless, of course, the real mystery is why you would accuse someone publicly of a crime you clearly fabricated." Color drained from Harrison's face. I must have forgotten." "No," Sarah said quietly. "You didn't forget." He whipped toward her, rage flaring. "You think you can talk to me like—" The older man stepped forward, his voice cutting cleanly through the sentence. "Enough. I've tolerated your arrogance long enough." Harrison blinked. "Who the hell are you?" "Lucien Valmont." Everything in the room tilted. Harrison staggered back as if struck. The name was not merely known, it was feared. Valmont International had swallowed firms far more powerful than Sterling's hedge fund. Rumors said one stern look from Lucien could collapse $1 million deal. Mr. Valmont, sir, please, this is a misunderstanding." "It is," Lucien agreed. "The misunderstanding being your belief that your wealth grants you the right to torment those you deem beneath you." He removed his phone from his jacket calmly, almost lazily. "What are you doing?" Harrison whispered. "Calling my board in Zurich. We hold a majority stake in the bank underwriting your fund. I think it's time we reevaluated our relationship." Harrison stumbled toward him, voice cracking. "No, please. You can't." "I can," Lucien said, "and I will." Jessica stepped back, watching the man she once admired unravel like loose stitching. Harrison turned to her, eyes wild. "Jessica, tell him, help me." She shook her head. "You humiliated her. You humiliated me. And you almost ruined her life. I don't even know who you are anymore." "You're leaving me," he demanded. "No," she said. "I left you the moment you opened your mouth." Harrison looked around for support, but the diners avoided his gaze. They'd come for indulgence, not to stand with a man whose cruelty had been exposed. Lucien slipped his phone into his pocket. "You have until tomorrow morning to gather your affairs. After that, you will find your access frozen." Harrison opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. His empire, built on hostile takeovers and intimidation, crumbled in the span of minutes. He turned and rushed out, shoving past patrons, disappearing into the cold night like a man chased by his own shadow. The restaurant exhaled. But the story did not end there. As the evening quieted and diners returned to their meals, Sarah found herself seated across from Lucien at a small corner table. He studied her with a gaze that searched deeper than appearances. "You defended yourself with grace," he said. "And earlier your use of dialect, it was flawless." Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks. "It's something I picked up before life got complicated." "Life is always complicated," he said gently. "Greatness is choosing to rise anyway." For a moment she had no words. She simply listened as he spoke of opportunities, of potential, of a future she thought she had lost when she boarded a plane home 3 years ago. Hours later, when she stepped outside into the crisp night, she carried a business card and a promise she scarcely dared to believe. The next days unfolded like scenes from a life she once imagined but never expected to live again. Interviews, meetings, a tour of the Valmont Foundation's Manhattan wing. Every step forward steadied her, strengthened her, reminded her of the woman she'd been before sacrifice swallowed possibility. By the time she stood in the marble-floored lobby of her new office, her father's transfer papers secured, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, hope. And far across the city, in an office stripped of power, Harrison Sterling watched his empire collapse piece by piece. Calls unanswered. Counts frozen. Partners disappearing. News outlets whispering about ethical concerns. His name once a boast, now a warning. Some punishments arrive in silence. His arrived like an echo of every cruelty he'd unleashed. Sarah didn't celebrate his downfall. But she didn't pity him either. People like him didn't break because of a single moment. They broke because no one feared them anymore. And she, someone he thought invisible, had been the first to stand tall. She returned to work weeks later, not as a server, but as a director, her badge glinting like a quiet victory. The restaurant staff welcomed her with awe, Tanya hugging her tightly. "You made it out," Tanya whispered. "No," Sarah corrected with a calm bravery she'd earned the hard way. "I made it through." And just before the video fades to its final frame, the narrator leaves viewers hanging on the question every listener now feels burning. If this is what one act of cruelty cost him, what happens when the world learns the full truth? When Sarah stepped out of the foundation building that evening, the city lights felt different, less like a reminder of everything she once lost, and more like proof of what she had fought her way back to. She paused at the sidewalk, letting the cold air settle over her, surprised by how steady she felt. For the first time in years, her future didn't look like a door closing. It looked open. Her phone buzzed. An update from the care facility. Her father had completed another speech session, and the note ended with 2 simple words he had spoken himself. "Making progress." She stared at the message, her breath catching, not from fear this time, but from a quiet triumph she never thought she'd feel again. Behind her, the glass windows reflected a woman she barely recognized. Someone who had survived humiliation, stood firm against cruelty, and rebuilt her life with the same determination that once carried her through Paris lecture halls. She understood now that strength wasn't loud. Strength was choosing truth even when the world tried to silence it. As she walked toward the station, a soft snow began to fall, settling on her coat like a silent promise of better days. Somewhere across the city, a man who once thrived on other people's fear was answering for every choice he made. And Sarah, finally, was answering to no one but herself. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so we can continue bringing powerful journeys to life.